Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, I wanted to take a look at the best cups for the XYZ Cup. Seeing as how it is more of a duelist cup style event instead of our standard festival, I figured, hey, let's do a full tier list and go through basically what I believe to be the best decks for the format. So notably, the ban list didn't really hit all that much. It just basically... Actually, I don't think anything changed, other than minor hits to things like stun, and that was kind of it. Like, none of the actual decks were hit, it was just kind of like floodgates, and I think that was it. I think it was just floodgates, and even with that being said, they missed a whole bunch. So, I'm going to quickly go over some of the decks in no particular order, and just kind of go through what I believe to be the best. Now, not all of these on here are going to be talked about, but we'll talk about a lot of them. Starting off with Yubel, which is actually a deck that is currently playable. I'm going to put it into like tier 3. The thing with Yubel is that it doesn't really have as much going for it outside of like just kind of putting Yubel onto the field and hoping your opponent runs into it with Nightmare Pain up or stuff like that. However, even with that being said, they still have the ability to kind of just like vomit out a whole bunch of guys. Maybe not vomit out, but like at the very least, like put out a whole bunch of bodies, which are difficult to remove, which is pretty decent, all things considered. So there's that. Next up, we have Labyrinth. Labyrinth is tier 1. Hip Hip Hooray, they didn't hit this deck. So yeah, all things considered, for an XZ event, this deck doesn't really use XZs, but other than that, it is very strong. Yeah, it's Labyrinth in a best of 1 format. It's pretty good. That's it. Next up, Sprite. Sprite's pretty bad. Actually, I'm going to just move these two right next to each other. They're basically the exact same. Sprite doesn't really do anything without, you know, a Link monster to go into. Like, in theory, it can do stuff, but the fact that you have to put 2 cards together and you can't go into, like, Sprint or Elf, it doesn't make it nearly as useful. Gigantic Sprite also isn't like as useful as the other two, as I previously mentioned, especially with the lock and stuff like that. Sure, you can make a bunch of rank 2s, but the rank 2s are also just generically worse. Like across the board, they're not nearly as strong as Link 2s or anything else for that matter. So it's okay, but it's not great. Next up, Madolche. Madolche, I'll put it in Rogue. At the very least, it can do something, but it does miss its like key combo piece. Not combo piece, but like one of its key components in Sistart, which does matter quite a bit, but overall, like, not great. This is 8-axis, which is the like rank 8 turbo, but like going second style deck that utilizes like kaijus and big like blowout cards basically. And even with that being said, yeah, they're not very good. They're super inconsistent, incredibly just bad in general, and not really going to do well against a lot of the other control style variants of the metagame. Maybe does well against Pearly because of like kaijus, but other than that, not very much. Next up, we also have Super Quant. Super Quant is not very good in general, just across the board, not very strong. It's interesting. That's kind of it, though. Yeah, that's it. Next up, we have True Draco. True Draco kind of does stuff. Not very much stuff, but it kind of does stuff. The fact that it has the ability to basically ignore the ban list is notable. But it, you know, without stun, it like... I mean, even... Yeah, it's... you know what? I'm gonna move this down. I've talked myself out of it. This deck is super bad. It's super inconsistent and super just not good. Even its end boards and stuff like that, like an optimal end board is basically just stun, and a lot of people have outs to various different stun decks and stuff like that. So it's not that big of a deal. And you know, you're only going to go first half of the time, so the other half of the time you're not going to go first, and it's going to be a problem. Next up we have Therion. Therion at least does something at the very least, because it does set up a negate, but that's kind of it. You know what, I'm actually going to move both of these guys up. The more that I look at it, the more I realize Sprite actually does have some plays, not many, but it does have some, as opposed to something like Therion, which kind of just stares at you and hopes that the singular negate was enough. Next up we have Kashtira. Kashtira I'm going to put it into tier 2, mostly due to inconsistencies. Yes, you do have the ability to, like, do your high-end combo with, like, Unicorn and stuff like that, and you have 3 Birth, so at the very least, you're more likely to get that kind of going. But if you don't draw either Unicorn or Fenris, you're kind of boned. There is so many problems if you don't draw either of those guys, and even if you do draw them, you're still probably boned, because honestly, like, a single hand trap can just sometimes kill you. So there's that, and with no bans to hand traps, it can kind of just backfire. Now, granted, with that being said, Shifter does exist. You can just Shifter your opponent, and hope and pray that that works. You know, play through hand traps, play through, like, a Veiler or something. But yeah, they're mostly too inconsistent for me to really say that it's worthwhile. Next up, Stun. Stun is just, you know, actually it got, like, significantly worse, so I'm going to put it far lower. Yeah, a lot of, like, the good stun cards, like Fossil Dyna and stuff like that, are banned, so not great. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Sous Ship is really bad. That's it. Next up we have Generator. Generator is pretty good. Overall, like, it doesn't really lose anything. The biggest problem is its consistency. If they don't have access to the field spell, they don't really do anything. So there's that. Yeah. Next up, Exorcister. Exorcister is okay. Exorcister, during these, like, very XZ heavy events, people will tend to play more Exorcister. I will say it's not very good. Most of the time, their end boards are very breakable. Just like the overall mechanics of Exorcister is very exploitable. Just, yeah, they don't, like, they kind of do a lot, but they really don't do a lot. It's kind of weird. If they, you know, sometimes they high roll you and they're able to do everything that they need, and sometimes they do absolutely nothing. Actually, most of the time they do absolutely nothing. But sometimes, you know, they, like, Shifter you, or, like, they get to go first and draw all of their interactions, and you draw no hand traps and stuff like that, but it's rare. Next up we have Zodiac. Zodiac I'm going to put into tier 2. I think Zodiac is very, very strong due to the fact that Zeus is now at 2, which does matter, I think, the most for Zodiac. And, you know, it's pretty good when you can just play a whole bunch of non-engine and then, like, 4 guys, and that's it. And your deck is still consistent. The thing is, with Zodiac, you could just, like, any guy gets you there. Just any guy, and then you play a whole bunch of non-engine, and you're off to the races. So whatever non-engine is great, you just play a bunch of that, and then you just kind of win off of that, which is pretty good. And with Zeus 2, boom. Now you have 2 Zeus, now you have the ability to control the game more effectively, yada yada. I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty strong. Next up we have Pearly. Pearly's probably the best deck in the current format. Actually, yeah, no, it probably is. Yeah, Pearly's just good in general. I don't know what to say. This is kind of the deck that everyone is expecting to play against, which I think is where a lot of people are like... So 2 things with Pearly. First of all, Pearly is a difficult deck to pilot. So people will play it very poorly and make it look way worse than it actually is. And secondly, a lot of people are preparing for Pearly and expecting to play against Pearly a lot, and therefore Pearly also does worse because people are specifically preparing for Pearly and yada yada. All in all, though, still probably the best deck. It doesn't really lose anything. You know, I don't think it lost anything, in fact. And so, yeah, it's just very, very strong. Next up, Makonko. Makonko I'm going to put into tier 3 behind Exorcister. It's not very good, but a lot of people will play it because it's a deck they probably already have. Should they play it? No, it's not very good. It's not very fun. But alas, there they are. It's, you know, you kind of can OTK sometimes, maybe. Probably not, though. The problem is exceptional. There's a bunch of problems with Makonko. Mostly the fact that, like, well, if a lot of people are playing a bunch of hand traps, right? Makako does falter to hand traps quite extensively, right? On top of that, if people are ending on like one monster, basically one monster, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to get the OTK effectively. Not always impossible, but like it's difficult. Also, you're going second, which inherently has a downside, just because your opponent basically gets to do their thing. And if you're playing hand traps, you're going to not have nearly as many cards that you're going... Like, having the appropriate amount of cards for breaking a board or for preventing a board makes it so that you have less cards with which to do your combo into OTK, which makes OTK decks way more problematic, right? That's why Tenpai basically relies on having like 5 non-engine and then 1 card that gets you there, and that's kind of all you need, right? And every other like OTK style deck just hasn't really performed all that well. However, even with that being said, it's still consistent enough to take wins in a lower power format, and having the ability to have target protection in particular has a decent matchup against the Pearly stuff. However, you still have to get there. You still have to get to that untargetable stuff. So again, if Pearly player's good, it's not really going to care. Next up we have Pendulum, which I'm just going to put in Rogue. I don't think there's a Pendulum deck in particular that is very good right now in the XZ event. You could maybe argue like Magispector with the new support, maybe. You could maybe argue for like Super Heavy Samurai or something like that, or anything else, but honestly they're not really going to do anything that other rank 4 strategies aren't going to do. And honestly, rank 4 strats, not very good, unless they're doing something in particular, like something unique. Which I don't think I have, even, like... Yeah, I don't think I have, like, a rank 4 spam deck on here. Or, I should say, I don't think there's a good rank 4 spam deck on here. Next up, we have Paleo. I think Paleo's pretty bad. Yeah, I just don't think it's very good. I do enjoy Paleo, but I don't expect it to do all that well. Setting 5 and passing when people are expecting you to set 5 and pass is not very strong. But on top of that, I just think that it loses a lot by not having the ability to go into Link monsters. Sure, like, you can go into the XZs, which is pretty nice, but normally how you would close out the game is through the Link monsters. Also, you have a better time going against Link monsters, which means that Paleo tends to do worse when it's not a Link-centric event. If this were a fusion event, I would put this in like F tier, but it's not a fusion event, so we're fine. But yeah, for the most part, even with that being said, the XZ event is not very good for Paleo. It's okay, but not very good. I'm going to put it slightly higher than Stun. I think it's just better than Stun. Next up, we have Fire King. Fire King is goated. Fire King is absolutely cracked. The thing is, Fire King lost nothing. Like, at all. And I'm talking more about pure Fire King, not like a Snake Eye variant. You could play it with the Snake Eye stuff. That's still absolutely a possibility. But the more important fact is that you have a really easy time OTKing. You basically lose nothing with your pure Fire King variants. You have a lot more interactions than people are like prepared for, and the card destruction effect is way more valuable. So having Skyburn in particular is very, very nice. Overall, very powerful. Similar, however, to Pearly though, it is difficult to pilot. You actually have to understand how the deck works in order for it to function properly. Next up we have Snake Eye stuff. Snake Eye stuff is... I'm going to put it in Rogue. In theory, it's good. In practice, it isn't. Because you're not really getting anything off of the Snake Eyes, except for maybe if you go into like Poplar, you're getting Subversion, and that's kind of it. So it's kind of a removal spell going second, and that's basically all you're getting. You're not really getting a whole lot from the Snake Eye engine without like Link monsters. You know, I'll put it slightly higher. I'll put it in tier 3, but it's not doing great. Next up, we have Horus. Horus is pretty decent. However, with that being said, highly overrated. The amount of people who are playing Horus is too many. In fact, so many people are playing Horus, and like none of them should be, realistically. First of all, just not nearly as strong as I think people think it is. Second of all, not nearly as fun as people make it out to be. It was interesting for like 5 seconds, and then it got really boring really quick. However, with that being said, genuinely, my opinion about Horus aside, when it comes to how fun it is, my opinion on how good it is in the XZ event, it's fairly decent. It's not doing anything too exceptional. It's just kind of like rank 8 turbo, and having the ability to just like spam out a whole bunch of guys and potentially OTK or put pressure onto the board at the very least is nice, but for the most part it's not really doing all that much. It's kind of, but not really. There's that. Next up we have like Earth Machine. Earth Machine, aka like rank 10 turbo, aka like trains, whatever you want to call it. Not very good. Just not gonna lie. Actually, you know what? This goes in everything else. It's bad. It's very, very bad. They don't really have any plays. Like, in theory, they have plays, but they don't. They don't really. They, like, hope and pray that their big monster just sticks around, even though there's no reason for it to stick around. Like, there's all sorts of removal in this format. So, I don't know. It's just kind of a hope and a prayer. I hope that you draw the 2 10s to get you into the lead, and hope that that is enough to OTK. It probably won't, but you can hope, you know? Next up, Exodia. Exodia apparently exists. I don't think it's very good. It's still just as inconsistent. It's not like that's changing, right? And it's not like people are not going to be able to OTK. Like, people are still going to be able to do that. So, yeah, you know, it exists, but it's not doing anything. Kairyu-Shin actually does exist. For some... As I said, the ban list missed, like, so much. However, I do believe that this is just better than, like, regular stun, because unlike regular stun, Kairyu-Shin, Umi control style decks were not touched, whereas regular stun was. So you could still do the Kairyu-Shin, send your opponent's entire board away, unless they're playing Pearly, in which case, Beauty absolutely shits on it. Sorry. Speaking of which, we're also going to talk about Stealth Kraken, which is basically the same deck. Slightly different, but it's Stealth Kraken, control, turn everything to waters, pops a bunch of random cards. You know, Umi, maybe put some sharks onto the field, maybe make another rank 4 or something like that. But for the most part, they're not really doing anything too much. Move them down. Next up, we have Time Thief Redoer, or Time Thief just in general. Nope, they're not very good. I hope I don't need to explain this, but they don't really do anything. Like, in theory, they do, but there are, like, 9,000 choke points, and their end board is, like, 2 interactions, maybe. Sometimes 3. Sometimes. I think they can get up to 3. But for the most part, it's pretty lackluster. And it requires, like, their entire hand to do that. Next up, we have Drytron. Drytron's fairly decent. I don't think it loses, like, anything. It still has Fafnir. It still has all of the rituals available to it. It still has Ava and Benten, because Konami just forgore that cards exist. So there's that. Virtual World also technically exists. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's good, but it does exist. It is there, and you could play it. Next up, we have Rescue Ace. Rescue Ace is pretty bad. I have really fallen on how good I think Rescue Ace is just in general. This deck is just bad. It's not as good of a deck as I thought it was. And with that being said, in the XZ event, where it loses access to all of the Link monsters and the Snake Eye stuff becomes significantly worse, it's still just as bad. In fact, far worse. Yeah, not being able to go into any of the Link monsters really does hinder the playability of the deck. And on top of that, a lot more decks don't really care about the set 4 that the Rescue Ace can do. So, there's that. Next up, we have Galaxy Eyes. Galaxy Eyes is like... you know what? I'm going to actually switch these two. Galaxy Eyes is not good. People will play it, but it's not very good. Doesn't really do... I mean, it kind of does stuff going first. It does have the ability to, like, end on... like, 2 guys, maybe? 2 interactions, you know? Maybe you get a Hope Harbinger out, as well as the Photon Lord, you know? On top of that, you may have the ability to make, like, your board untargetable, which is, like, that's pretty good. You're not going to be able to do both of those, but you could maybe do one or the other. You can make your board untargetable, or you can make... And that's where the problem arises. Happy doesn't care. Smile. So there's that. Next up, we have Lyrilisk. I think Lyrilisk is kind of mid. I still think it has the ability to, like, do quite a lot. Due to the way that the Lyrilisk monsters work in particular, you do have the ability to make, like, multiple Zeuses and stuff like that, and really pump out a lot of guys, as well as playing a lot of non-engine, which is also pretty nice. So there's that. Yeah, moving on. Next up, we have Numeron. Numeron is highly inconsistent, which is the reason why I'm putting it so low. While, yes, it can OTK, it also dies to singular points of interaction very frequently. So, there's that. It also needs to go second. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. So, again, while it can do that, while it can OTK, while it can do all of this stuff, it's very inconsistent, not very worthwhile. Next up, we have the adventure stuff, which is just bad. It does exist. You could play, like, adventure good stuff, but it's not very... don't. Memento, also, technically, you could... Theoretically, okay? You could play Memento. That is a possibility. I wouldn't suggest it, because without the fusion, what the heck are you doing? Next up, we have Cyburst, which is basically just rank 4 turbo, and this is going to be the last one. It's also bad. Not really doing a whole lot. Rank 4s are not all that strong. Like, what are you going to do? Make Baguska pass? Okay, cool. Here's Imperm. Your whole board died. Great. There are a few other cards that you could potentially do. I just realized I didn't put Utopia on here. I put Super Quant, but I didn't put Utopia on here. What am I doing? Anyway, that's beside the point. Even with that being said, the reason I brought that up is because Utopia and the Cyburst style strategies basically do the same thing, which is pray that the opponent just doesn't have anything, and you get to make, like, Utopic Draco or something like that. Yeah, but even with that being said, you could just be doing so much more. Anyway, that's basically it. Don't really have anything else to say. This event is a nightmare. It's super bad. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. I really don't like this event. I think it's very, very silly and just does not make any sense for you. Why in the world would I want to play a Duelist Cup style event where I'm locked into XYZ? That doesn't... If I want to play competitive, give me the modern, or give me, like, a format that's interesting. This is not a cool format. This is a boring format. This is a format we've seen in other festivals before that no one really cares about, right? It's the same thing with any of the, like, summoning mechanic lock ones, where it's just like, oh, cool. This doesn't do anything. This is boring. It's not really interesting. It's not like a 2010 format, right? Or like the Edison format one, or the GOAT format, Dual Trial or what have you, or like Theme Chronicle with the NR or anything like that. Anyway, it's tragic. It's annoying. Anyway, that's gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, that like us very much. So appreciate it. And if I missed anything, let me know down below. Utopic would probably be around here. I'm also going to quickly change things, so this video is going to go on a little bit longer. If you've been here, you can leave, that's fine. But yeah, I'm going to quickly change things up so that people actually have to watch the video, which is very, very funny. We'll move a few things up. We'll move Pearly down. We'll move Pearly to here. How about we do this? And you know what? Fire King's a little too low. I'll put you a little bit higher. How about that one? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep rambling here so that at the end of the you've done the whole thing. Hey, shout outs to my members. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Shout out to Coots, who gives me memberships and stuff like that. The gift of membership. Thank you. Shout outs to all sorts of people. Murkrow, etc. Thank you. And yeah, if you want to become a member, check the join button down below. I have like emotes and stuff like that, and I do special streams where I play Pokemon mostly. Oops, I crossed off the wrong thing on my little list here. Anyway, that's it for the tier list video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, the likes very much so appreciate it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.